Hi guys, welcome back to another interesting tutorial. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you're new to my channel, kindly subscribe and turn on the bell icon so that you get to know anytime I post a new video. And for my returning subscribers, thank you so much. So for today's tutorial, I'll quickly show us on how to make a lotus pleat flower girl dress for a 3-year-old baby girl. So if you're interested, keep on watching. I'll be using 5 yards of net and 1.5 yard of satin and then 1 yard of lining. Like I said earlier, this is going to be for a 3-year-old baby girl. So I'll quickly draft the bodice pattern and then we continue. So here I have my pattern paper, and this is the bodice length. The bodice length is 9 inches plus 1 inch for my sewing allowance, making it 10 inches. So I have that on a straight line. So the next thing to do is to mark out the shoulder. I'm going to rush this part because if you're a returning subscriber, you should be familiar with this part. So the shoulder measurement is 9 inches. Half of that is 4.5 because my paper is on fold. So that is 4.5 there, and then I'll go down by ½ an inch for the shoulder slope. Okay, so now the next thing is the armhole measurement. Now the armhole measurement is 4.5 as well, but I'll be making it 4 3/4 because I want the armhole area to have a little ease. So this is 4 3/4. I'm going to mark that to a straight line. So after connecting it, now the next thing is the neck width and neck depth. So for this, I'll be making it a neck width of 2 1/4. Okay, for this part, it depends on how free you want the neck width to be. If you don't want it that free, you can make it 2 inches. It's still okay. So for the neck depth, I'll be making it 2 inches. So here is my 2 inches. I'm going to use my French curve now and connect. If you don't have this, you can also use your hand and connect it. Okay, so now this is the neckline, and then I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the neck width point. Okay, so now I'm going to mark out whatever I have on my shoulder. That is what I'm going to mark on this armhole line, which is 4.5, and then I'll connect it to this shoulder slope point. So now I'm going to determine the midpoint here. Here now I have 4 1/4. So this is the midpoint, and then on that point now I'll go in by ½ an inch. Okay, this is ½ an inch now. Then I'm going to mark the chest measurement. The chest measurement is 23 inches. So the chest measurement is 23 inches divided by 4. I'm going to have 5 3/4, which is here. Okay, and then I'll add my ½ inch for my sewing allowance. Here you can also add 1 inch. It's still okay as the sewing allowance. So now the waist measurement is 22, which is 5.5, and then I'll add my ½ inch as well for the sewing allowance, and it's just easy as that. I'll connect the points, and the front is almost ready. For this part, we're going to make it a little kind of yoke. Okay, but if you want, you can also leave it this way, but mine, I don't want to use only the net for the bodies. I would like to add satin because most kids complain of this net itching them. So I'm going to make this upper part like a yoke. Okay, so now this is how it looks. All I'm going to do now is to mark from this midpoint. You can choose to use the midpoint, but for me, I am going to use from this point here, this point of intersection here. I'm going to connect it straight now. This is where I'll be using. This part now will be the yoke, and this part down is going to be where I'll add my satin. So it's as simple as that. I'll just cut this off now, but when I'll be cutting on my satin, I'm going to add my ¼ inch just here for the sewing allowance. So this is how to go about cutting out the front, or rather drafting out the front pattern. So I'm going to quickly cut this out, and then we cut the back part of this dress. Back pattern, here I have my paper, and I just mark out the body's length. Remember that we're working with 10 inches, and this one here is my 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So I'm going to repeat what some of the things I did when I was drafting the front. So here now I'm going to mark out the armhole. Remember that we are working with 4 3/4. So I'm going to connect that to a straight line. Okay, I'll quickly draft this pattern because it's very easy and you should know it by now. Okay, so I'll just mark the shoulder, which is 4.5, and I'll also repeat the same thing here. And then the neck width, remember that we use 2 1/4, and for the neck depth I'm going to use just 1/2 inch. Okay, then I'll come down by 1/2 inch for the shoulder slope. So I'm going to connect all the lines now. So here I have all the lines connected. Okay, so for this part I'll also repeat the same. This is 4 1/4, the midpoint is here. Remember that I said this part is optional. If you like, you can just mark your chest measurement and connect it back to this line, but since I will not be adding any sleeve, okay, I'll be repeating it what I did in the front here, because I love the way the shape is going to be at the back. So the chest measurement is 5 3/4, while the waist is 5.5. okay, and then I'll add a 1/2 inch for my sewing allowance, and then I'll connect. So after connecting now, I am going to come up by 1/2 inch on this waist area. This is 1/2 inch. I'll just connect it back to this point, and then the back pattern is ready. There's nothing much to this back pattern. Okay, and then I'll connect this part, and I'll just cut. It's as easy and simple as that. So before we start making the lotus, we're going to sew the upper parts. We're going to close it up before we start with the lotus part of this dress. So I'm going to cut now, and I'll cut on my fabric as well so that we can start sewing. All cut out. This is what I'll be using for the back, and this is the front. So I'm going to start by joining the front, that is the yoke part. I'm going to start by sewing that before joining the shoulders together. So here I just finished joining the yoke parts, as you can see. Now I'm going to join the shoulder, the neckline, and the armhole, and give it a good press before we continue. So here I just joined the shoulder, the neckline, and the armhole. So I'm going to turn this inside out now, and then I'm going to cut out 1 yard from my 5 yards. That is what we'll be using to make that is what you're going to make the upper part. So I'll use the 1 yard for that part. Okay, let me just turn this inside out, and I'll give it a press. is ready, as you can see. So here I have my 1 yard. Like I said earlier, I just cut this out from the 5 yards that I'm working with from the net. This is 1 yard, and I'm going to use this now to make the lotus for this upper part. Okay, now for your lotus, you can decide to make up to 15 to 20 depending on the size of your lotus. So before we continue, our online classes are on, so if you're interested in any of our online classes, kindly check the description box for a number to reach out. That is if you want to partake in those classes. So now for the lotus, I am going to cut out the height of 4 and a width of 4 inches as well. So I'm going to cut that as many. That will be enough to give me up to 15 to 20 lotus. Okay, so here is 4. I'm going to mark it and then cut it out. By the time you cut it out, it's going to look like a square. So this is it. I just cut this out. It's looking like a square. This is 4 inches by 4 inches. Like I said, you can decide to make it bigger or smaller depending on what you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to take this and cut up to 20 pieces of this, and then we continue. So here I have up to 20 pieces of this cut out. Okay, so now we're going to start by folding it one after the other. Okay, so this is one. I'm going to bring these 2 edges together. It's very easy to fold, and then you bring these other 2 together this way, and it's going to give us a kind of triangle, as you can see. Now you're going to bring this leg in and repeat the same for this other side, and it's as easy and simple as that. So this is how you fold a lotus. This is how it is. Okay, so now I'm going to take this now to my sewing machine and secure it very well. I'm going to repeat this on all these that I have here before we will now start placing it on the upper part of this dress. I'm through with all of them. As you can see, I just did in all. I have 20 pieces of this now. So I'm going to take I'm going to turn this to the front now and place this on it. Here you can decide how you want to place yours. Okay, so this is the front. I'm going to take this now and place it on this line. This is how I'm going to place it. Now you can see I'm going to sew it 1/2 inch from this line below. That is where I am placing it, 1/2 inch from this line. This is it. You can also decide to make it go up or low. It's all depends on what you are trying to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to pin this now all through. For this first line, I'm going to make it 5. Okay, so here I have 5 of it. So I'm going to run a straight stitch on it. But when you want to run the stitch, make sure that your lining is separate. Don't sew together with your lining. Okay, I'm going to run a straight line on this, and then we continue. So after sewing it, this is how it looks. As you can see, I just use my sewing machine and secure that straight inside. This is the lining. You can see that it's still clean. So I'm going to continue now by placing the rest on top of this. I'll be using from this point now, I'm going to use 3/4 inch from this line. That is where I am going to start sewing the second one. And now I used 5 pieces of this, so the second line is going to be 6, and I'll continue like that. The next line 7, 8, just like that. Okay, so this is it. I'm going to pin it also and sew on a straight line using the 3/4 inch distance. Then I'll just pin all and sew. So I'm going to continue like this until I will exhaust all these that I have. After placing all one after the other, this part is the side that is going to stress you a little. Okay, so just take your time and be patient with it. So now here I'm going to add my band. I'll be using my band now to close up this line, and then I'll close the side so that we can sew the lower part of this dress. So after closing it up, this is what it looks. This is the front and this is the back. You can see that all our lines are inside. So now I'm going to keep this aside and take my net. This is 4 yards. Remember, we're working with 5 yards, and now I have 4 yards remaining because I used 1 yard for all these tulip. So now I'm going to cut out the length of this lower part, which is 16 plus ½ inch for my sewing allowance, making it 16.5. So I'm going to cut out 16.5, as many as this will give me, and then I'll take that and use my gather stitch and run it. Then we'll cut the satin. This I just finished gathering this lower part. All I did was, just after cutting, you use your gather stitch to run it, and then gather it, you have your waist measurement. That is what I just did, and then I join it with the upper part. Now the dress is looking so beautiful. So for your satin, all you have to do is to multiply the waist measurement by 3. You can also multiply by 2.5 depending on what you're trying to achieve. So mine, I multiply by 3 and I gathered it as well together with the net. And make sure that your satin is 1 inch shorter than your main fabric, while your lining should be 2 inches shorter than the main fabric, and then 1 inch shorter than your satin. Okay, so I believe you can recreate this. Okay, so guys, that is it for today. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you all very soon.